I'm worried that you're going to think differently of me because I am the one that gave you a son that has a disability. And the look on his face was just like, one of like, I can't even believe that you would think that. And that's what he said. He's like, the look on his face was like, shut up, shut that thought down right now. That is not it at all. And he just looked at me and he said, Emily, I never want you to think that thought again. That's absolutely not true. I love Luke just like I love all of my other kids.
Welcome to the Nick Speaks podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud for the disabled community. Tune in every Tuesday, and don't forget to subscribe. And now your host, Nicholas Comstock.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the brand new episode of Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. I am your host, Nick Comstock. You guys, thank you so much for joining me on this first Tuesday in 2026. I'm so glad to have you here. Hope everyone has had a wonderful Christmas holiday season, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all the things. Hope you guys have had a great holiday season. I know I have. I am ready to jump right into it and introduce my guest. You guys, I love having the parents' perspective on the show. And today I have someone who's never been here before. She's actually on a housing project with me through the state of Ohio. We may delve a little bit into that, but today it's all about the parents' perspective. You guys, please help me welcome Emily Kendall to the program. Emily, how are you doing?
Hi, Nick. Happy New Year, everybody. Nick, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm really honored to be here, and what a great way to start 2026.
Yes, it is. And I knew during our first meeting that I wanted to have you on the housing project. During our first meeting with the housing project that we're on, I knew I wanted to have you, but you ran away too quickly for me to ask you the first time. So I made sure to get to you the next time. You have a very interesting story. You have not one, but two disabled children. And I know that having a one disabled child, I tell people all the time, changes the ball game, because you're used to having a child without a disability, and then all of a sudden disability happens and you're like, whoa, I wasn't prepared for this. But you don't have one, you have two. So talk a little bit about, before we get into the dynamics of your life, talk a little bit about yourself and your family dynamic, and then we'll ask some questions.
Great. Thank you. My story to having all three of my kids has been a very interesting one. And I want to start with my oldest daughter, who was born 11 weeks early and spent 2 months in the NICU. So she is a healthy 9-year-old now. Her name is Emma. She's very creative. She's a great big sister. But we had that experience early on with having a kiddo in the NICU. She does not have any complications from being born that early. But that was part of our experience and really gave us a foundation, so to speak, when our son Luke was born. So when Emma was about 3 years old, Luke came along, and we're so glad to have him in the picture. Because I had a very high-risk pregnancy the first time around, you have a likelihood of going into spontaneous preterm labor, about a 10 to 15% chance with your subsequent pregnancies. So I was very closely monitored with my pregnancy with Luke and had an ultrasound every 2 weeks. So Luke was born and diagnosed at birth with Down syndrome, and we did not know. He did not present any of the traditional markers in utero for Down syndrome, and he was looked at every 2 weeks. So it was a surprise to us when he was born. And on top of that, when he was 5 days old, Luke had surgery on his colon. Luke was diagnosed about 3 days after he was born, he wasn't going to the bathroom properly and he was vomiting a lot. So,
Wow. And they knew that after 5 days.
well, on day 3, he was transported from the hospital where he was born to Cincinnati Children's Hospital, where we had a team of colorectal specialists start seeing him and looking at, okay, and he had a series of tests, and they suspected that he had a condition called Hirschsprung's disease. Now, Hirschsprung's disease is a colon condition where part of your colon doesn't have nerve endings, and this affects people with IDD and neurotypical people. So this is a thing that can just happen. Part of your colon doesn't have nerve endings. So when Luke was 5 days old, he went into surgery. The plan was they were going to biopsy along his colon and figure out which part of his colon had nerve endings and which part didn't. And then they would have resectioned his colon and reconnected it, and we would have moved on from there. What ended up happening is they discovered that Luke only has about a third of his colon that has nerve endings. And they created an ileostomy for him, which is where his small intestine is routed to his stomach, and he has an ostomy bag. So I didn't know this until Luke came out of surgery and had this ostomy. There are 1 million people in the United States with an ostomy, and in many cases, they are life-saving for people that suffer from severe Crohn's disease, colitis, colon cancer. So we've been on a very interesting journey with the Hirschsprungs and Down syndrome. But we were NICU veterans by the time Luke was born. So Luke was born at 37 weeks. So he was only in the NICU. Even with the surgery, he was there for 3 weeks. So we were used to the routines and the rhythms of what it is like to be in the NICU because of our oldest daughter, Emma. And we went on our merry way, and we thought, great, this is our family. We are set. My husband, we're a blended family. He has 3 older boys. And so together we had Emma and Luke at that point in time. And a month before my 39th birthday, we found out I was pregnant, which is very interesting because at the time I had an IUD. And an IUD is a form of birth control that is supposed to be 99.9% effective. So here I am, almost 40 years old, getting ready to have another baby. And that was a very interesting pregnancy, obviously, given my age, given the fact that I had spontaneous preterm labor in the past. I went and had an ultrasound and a doctor's appointment every week for 40 weeks with our youngest, Grace. And she was delivered on her due date.
Because it was with the IUD, or was this precautionary because your other one was born so early? Did they just keep it going that way?
That's a great point, Nick. Yes, because I had spontaneous preterm labor. Yes, because of the IUD, which it adds a lot of potential complications. We were very fortunate that Grace was born on her due date, and we did not experience any of those complications. And then because of my age, I am considered advanced maternal age. So all of those factors made that pregnancy a lot riskier. And Grace was born and every week.
Yeah. So I bet that was annoying having to see doctors every week.
I looked at it because it was a high risk pregnancy. I looked at it more as reassuring. And I had this little mantra for myself. And I kept every week when I would start oh my gosh, because so many things could have gone wrong. I would just remind myself, okay, at your last appointment, you heard the heartbeat. The heartbeat was good. We had an ultrasound. Here's all the things that Instead of letting my mind spiral, I would keep this log after every appointment so I could return to that and kind of ground myself and not let my thoughts and emotions get the better of me during what was a stressful time. I had two kids. Luke, because his GI system is not he's not using his colon, and because of his ileostomy, he is a lot more susceptible to gastrointestinal viruses. So starting when he was about a year and a half old until he was about 4 or 5, he was in the hospital several times a year because he would get a gastrointestinal virus, which his system can't process like someone who has their full colon and is using their colon. So we would have to go into the hospital and he would have to be on fluid replacement, and they would track and monitor his electrolytes, magnesium, and potassium to make sure that what he would get severely dehydrated. So we had to make sure that all of that was managed and replaced properly so that we didn't do any damage to any of his internal organs. So
yeah,
I was pregnant with Grace, and we were in the hospital 4 or 5 times that year while I was pregnant.
with
Luke was in the hospital and I was pregnant with Grace. And so navigating that, and that was a very interesting time. So I would do what I could to try and manage my stress levels the best that I could.
I want to back up a little bit. So 5 days,
Yeah.
5 days prior, you found out he has Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably thinking, I'm assuming you'll tell me, oh, Down syndrome, there's plenty of people that struggle with this. We'll be fine. Not a diagnosis that we want, but we'll be fine. Correct or not? Did you?
It wasn't what we planned for. No. However, our babysitter that babysat for us growing up, her oldest daughter has Down syndrome. And then the family that I babysat for, the mom of the two kids that I babysat for, her sister has Down syndrome. So they were my first 2 phone calls after Luke was born. And I will never forget, Stacy, my babysitter growing up, told me, never underestimate Luke ever. Like, just don't ever put any limits on him. And she told me this funny story about her daughter was on the swim team, and sometimes she wouldn't go off the block when the beat to jump into the pool and swim your heat would go off. She wouldn't always jump in, and Stacy would just give her a little shove, like, come on, you gotta go. So just this very reassuring network of family and friends that we have that really sky's the limit. No, don't limit him with expectations. And it was definitely an adjustment. I think the biggest unknown and the thing that was all brand new, and definitely the biggest learning curve at the time, was the Hirschsprung's disease and the ileostomy, and learning all of that.
Did you feel like it put a wrench in everything? Like, oh no, everything is not going to be okay. Like, I thought we could handle this, and now this is worse.
I do remember having a moment like when he came out of surgery, and we did not expect that he was going to come out of surgery with an ileostomy. So the plan was, we're going to go in, biopsy the colon, take out the part of the colon that doesn't have the nerve endings, reconnect the part that does, and off we go. The outcome was different, so that took some adjusting. And I think what I worried about at the time the most was the medical aspect, and thinking, I am not a medical professional. I am a marketing professional by trade. And how am I going to do this? What is this going to involve? Mm-hmm. What is Luke's life going to look like? I I've learned, and I think a lot of these experiences have shown me and helped strengthen this idea that things do not go the way that you expect them to go. So if you can let go of your expectations, it it's better. Like it works out because your expectations are you've made them up in your mind. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily reality. So I think that was the part for me that was where I had the most kind of concern, like, oh gosh, like what is this going to be like? Will this put limits on his life? Because I don't want to limit him in any way. And frankly, like, no, it really hasn't. Aside from the hospitalizations, it really hasn't stopped him. And now I can change an entire ostomy appliance in like the half dark. I've done it in a Buc-ee's, like I've done it in the car. Like it's become a part of our lives and our routine, and it's just part of our deal now.
How old is he now?
Luke is 6 and he is in kindergarten and he loves it. He loves school. He rides the bus to and from, which is like a really big step in independence for him. His teacher asked me a couple weeks ago, how do you think he's doing? And I said, Luke operates at a pretty high frequency, like just like he's a bright energy being. And I said, I feel like he's vibrating even higher now. Like he just seems so much more confident, so much more sure of himself. Just a little like extra pep in his step, which I mean, he already had a lot of pep in his step. So to like, it's been pretty amazing to see him blossom in kindergarten. And I honestly was a little worried about it. He made a change from a wonderful school where he was for 3 years and everybody knew who he was and loved on him. And it was a smaller school and it was a little more manageable. It was all one story. So now he's moved to a bigger school. It's a bigger building, bigger physically. And it's a whole new thing. And he's just risen to the occasion.
So it's interesting. You talk about school, and I know we didn't go through this in the pre-call, but this is why I love what I do, is because we kind of develop the conversation as we're going. Are they, so they're obviously aware of his colostomy bag.
Mm-hmm.
Is anyone at the school trained to do that? And how does that all?
Yes. So we train them how to empty it twice a day, and it gets emptied twice a day. Eventually, the long-term plan is that Luke has had, when Luke was 2.5 years old and we had just found out I was pregnant with Grace, we did have we had the surgery to remove the part of his colon that didn't have nerve endings and reconnect the part that did. So that's ready to go. And we're ready to hook up all of his plumbing, so to speak. The idea is that the ileostomy is not necessarily a lifelong thing, but they're great about it. They eventually, if we need to teach him how to do it, like we'll teach him how to do it, but they empty it twice a day. They've got extra supplies on hand, and we live really close and work really close to school. So if we need to go up there and help them, we can do that pretty easily.
That's awesome. And I'm glad they're not like, that's above my pay grade type of thing, or, anything like that. Because everybody can have those assholes in the world that are just like, no thanks. And so from what you're telling me is that the colostomy bag may not be a lifetime thing. He may be able to grow out of it eventually, or am I missing something?
No, that's correct. Eventually we'll be able to hook up, we'll be able to reconnect his small intestine to his colon. That is a longer term plan. And we want to make sure we're working on potty training right now and some more verbal communication cues that he can tell us that he's ready to go. So that's what we're working on right now. So if that goes well, then we will make a plan to reconnect. Probably do it over the summer because it will be a big adjustment. So that is part of the plan. And I just want to reiterate for your listeners, this has never really stopped Luke at all. Like, he's been able to do everything. He played soccer for the first time this fall, and he goes swimming. And it was really funny the other day. It snowed here in Cincinnati, where I'm based, and my two girls wanted to go outside and play in the snow. And Luke went upstairs and brought me his bathing suit. He was like, I am not going out in the snow. I want to go swimming. I want to go to the beach. And I was like, okay, buddy, well, it's not happening today, but I appreciate the sentiment. So it really has not really disrupted school. Again, aside from the hospitalizations, which he handles like a pro, it's become part of a life.
You told me that he semi enjoys the hospitalizations a little bit because he gets to pick his own TV shows and doesn't have to worry about sisters fighting and all that type of stuff. Tell me a little bit about that.
That's right. So Luke, he's very resilient, and I think that's one of his greatest strengths. So he can adapt to many situations, and he gets, it's the hospital, but I think he kind of looks at it like, no, this is a little vacation. I'm away from my sisters. I don't have to squabble with them. I have these lovely people that wait on me hand and foot. I get undivided attention from my favorite people in the world who come hang out with me in the hospital, and I get unlimited screen time. Like, I think he's like, I'm going to make the best of this situation. And there are times when it's hard. He has to have an IV to run the fluid so that we're replacing and making sure his fluid levels, his hydration levels are stable. And placing an IV in Luke is hard. He's a little guy. He's got small veins, and that could be an ordeal, and it's not pleasant. But even after 4:00 in the morning, one night, I remember I was pregnant with Grace. His IV went bad, so they had to come in and replace it. So that means this whole team with a special ultrasound monitor comes in. We have to turn on all the lights. We have to bundle Luke up so that we can hold him in a safe position so that we can place the IV. And, it was not a fun experience, and it was traumatic, and he was crying, and, I'm crying because I hate to see my kiddo, in pain. But then, he bounced back. After they were done, he kind of bounced back, and I held on to him, and he waved, signed thank you, and gave them I love you sign. And I was just like, dude, that is so sweet. Just, even though they had to, this was not a pleasant experience, he had the grace to say thank you, because I think he knows people are there to take care of him.
So sweet. And
Yeah.
I love hearing that type of story. You've mentioned signing the last couple times. So is it the Down syndrome, the type of Down syndrome that he has that has made him struggle with verbalization?
No, it's not Down syndrome at all. And remember, Down syndrome is a genetic condition. So there's 3 types. The most common is called trisomy 21. That's a triplicate copy on the 21st chromosome. There's another type called mosaic Down syndrome, where some of the genes have it and some don't. And then there's one called translocution, I think. You'll have to check my facts on this. But that's one I think that can be passed down. Down syndrome isn't necessarily a spectrum like autism, but Luke's Luke has apraxia of speech, which is a motor planning delay. Now, some people with Down syndrome can have apraxia. Some people with autism can have apraxia. Some people with no no diagnosis like that can have apraxia of speech. And then there's different types of apraxia. So what that means for Luke, the apraxia of speech, it's the neurons in his brain. It's a muscle disconnect. Like the neurons don't fire to be able to tell his brain to move the muscles to make the sound. Like talking like we're talking right now is actually such a complex process. And Luke, with the apraxia, there's some disconnects in the physical motor part of actually making sounds. So Luke understands everything that you say to him. He can respond with his AAC or with sign language. And he does really well. It's really neat to hear him expand his verbal vocabulary, but we know it's all up there. We look at it as our jobs to help him figure out how to best get it out.
Yeah. So does the apraxia kind of like, I know the colon and the apraxia are different, but is the apraxia gonna improve over time, you think, to where he can have a full-on conversation, or is that not feasible?
I don't know. It's kind of like one of those things where we're trying not to have a certain expectation. Do I recognize that could life be easier for him if he was able to verbally communicate more reliably? Yes. So in a way, like as a parent, like I'm trying to balance. It's a balancing act. You want to balance what's best for Luke,
Sure.
what's best for out in the world, and you also don't want to put unrealistic expectations and push something too hard. It's a tightrope walk for sure. So at the same time, though, it's about letting go of those expectations, and it's really a day by day type of thing. And our goal is to make sure, I think for me right now, my biggest goals are making sure that Luke can read and write really well to the best of his ability. And that's like, let's make sure we're honed in on that, and then getting him some therapies and intervention to help with the speech. Do I think that, like, I know that he's capable of it, but it's probably something. I think that the apraxia, we might need to try some different methods, and there's all kinds of resources out there, which is really fascinating. But I don't know, he could be hosting his own podcast someday, Nick, or he could be,
yes.
Who knows? Like, who knows what he's going to be doing? And that's kind of like up to him.
Yeah. So let's move to the second little one.
Oh, yeah, Grace. We started talking about her and her surprise arrival and born on her due date. And so Grace came, her name is Grace because she is here by the grace of God, with that 0.01% chance of getting around an IUD.
Yeah.
And she's really rounds out our family very beautifully. And she's one of the best things to happen to Luke, because they are best of pals, and they're co-conspirators, and they just have this really special connection, which is really neat to see. But when Grace was 15 months old, she was not walking, and our pediatrician expressed concern. Grace had met all of her other milestones, and she was a very active baby. And our pediatrician was puzzled that she wasn't walking yet. And Mark, my husband, and I kind of chopped it up to, well, she's the third kid, and she's super cute, and everybody totes her around and gets her whatever she wants anyway. So she might not be that motivated to walk. The pediatrician wanted us to go to physical therapy, which we did. And in about 3 weeks of physical therapy sessions, Grace was walking, but her feet turned out, and she had a lot of muscle tightness and stiffness in her left side, particularly in her left calf. Yeah. So the physical therapist,
mine is too.
Really, on the left side.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to know this. This is Grace. So we went to the Neuro Infant Motor Clinic at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Back to Cincinnati Children's. If they had like a Delta Sky Miles Club for that place, we would be up there. But we love it. We're so lucky in Cincinnati to have that amazing place. So we're back there, and at the time they evaluated Grace and they said, okay, we think that she is at risk for cerebral palsy and or a spinal cord tether. So we got Grace an MRI. She does not have a spinal cord tether, but they found a tiny micro hemorrhage on her right medial thalamus, which the neurologist said that, given her motor findings on the left side and this discovery of this small micro hemorrhage, we're going to give her a diagnosis of cerebral palsy. So that came in February of 2023, I think. So that has been something that we've navigated primarily with physical therapy, a lot of physical therapy for Grace. She does not, as of right now that we can tell, and she does not have an intellectual disability, but she does have that developmental disability, the cerebral palsy. So that's something that we're navigating as a family.
When she was diagnosed with this, Emily, was this like, really, what did I do to deserve 2 kids with, my first one's 11 weeks early, which I was 8 weeks early. My twin brother and I both were, and yes, I'm a fan, and everybody's like, oh my God, that's so awesome. It's not all it's cracked up to be. But I was 8 weeks early. Yours was 11 weeks early, and then you find out, oh, another one with a disability. At this point, do you feel like, why aren't they catching this stuff before birth? Like, they were all diagnosed at birth. So do you feel like at some point the medical is failing you, or do you just, this is what we're doing and this is my lot in life?
My dad always says that, Emily, there's a reason they call medicine a practice, because it is not, there's a lot of science behind it, yes, but it's the medical practice. So at the time, of course, when you get that diagnosis, it is always, it's a lot. I think about when I was in the hospital with my oldest and they were like, this baby is coming, and it could, they had to prepare us that this baby is coming and she might not survive. Like, that's what they prepared us for at 11 weeks. So
Wow.
that, yes. Then Luke's at birth diagnosis, and then Grace. It does feel like a lot sometimes. It does. But Mark, my husband, likes to have this analogy, like, you play the hand you're dealt. Like, a good poker player can win with the worst hand at the table if you know how to play the game. And I think that, honestly, Nick, for me, all of these experiences have made me a stronger and better person. Really. As hard as they've been at times, I am a stronger, more resilient. I don't know about more patient, because I was never a very patient person to begin with. So I don't think that meter has moved very far. But, and I just see the world in a totally, with each one of them, there are things that I have taken from these experiences where I see the world in a totally different way. And it like, when you're at the hospital and it is 4:00 in the morning and they got to replace Luke's IV and you're pregnant, and that's and it's Christmas, because we were in the hospital on Christmas one year. It can be hard, but you just have to tap into this wall of strength. And We've got amazing family and friends. And when Emma was born, it was totally out of my control, right? Like there, and I think was the lesson that I carried with me, because you asked, did you feel like there was anything that you could have done, or like, what about the medical community? Do you think they should have done something different? I think the lesson when Emma was born is like, this is totally out of my control. Like there is nothing that I did to cause this. It's totally out of my control. I have to give it over to the higher power, God. I believe in God. So I had to give that over and really surrender that piece. But I made a promise that every person in the hospital is responsible in part for Emma's care and outcome. So I'm going to do my very best to treat them with kindness and respect and gratitude. The person at the front desk, the person cleaning the floor, especially the people cleaning the hospital. The people cleaning the hospital, please take time. If you ever end up, or anyone listening finds yourself there, please take the time to thank the people that clean the hospitals, to keep that place safe and clean. I think is just as critical as the highest paid surgeons in that building. So I made that promise, and I carried that out, because that was something that I did have in my power and my control, is to make that promise, to be grateful and kind and humble. And I really do think that had a hand in all of our outcomes.
Yeah, because, if you're going to be, rude and mean to the people that are helping you, you don't know what the people that are helping you are capable of either. So, I mean, you want to be sure that you're as nice as possible, especially when they have little lives in their hands. I want to go back to something that we talked about in the pre-call, and it was something that made me think that, oh my God, I got to meet your husband, Mark, because he's my hero. And so that's going to happen. But talk about the time you were kind of feeling like, oh, Mark wasn't really, you didn't know if he was really going to accept all this. You didn't know how he was feeling. Talk about that experience, because that made me want to go through the rooftop when he told me his response.
Well, thank you. Mark is my hero too. Seriously, he is one of the most honest person, and has so much integrity in his life, and he lives his life with a ton of faith, and he's super smart and hardworking, but he is very calm. He's very logical. We make a great team, because I am neither of those things. So when Luke was born, Mark has 3 older boys, and they're all athletes, and Mark was a tremendous athlete. And I had this moment where I was thinking in my head, and I expressed this to Mark, right after Luke was born, in the hours, and it's ego, right? It was focused on me, not necessarily on Luke, but I said, I'm worried that you're going to think differently of me, because I am the one that gave you a son that has a disability. And the look on his face was just like, one of like, I can't even believe that you would think that. And that's what he said. He's like, the look on his face was like, shut up, shut that thought down right now. That is not it at all. And he just looked at me and he said, Emily, I never want you to think that thought again. That's absolutely not true. I love Luke just like I love all of my other kids, and I'm going to love him. And this is my son. This is my son.
That is incredible. Because I shared with you, and I've shared on this program many times, the statistic that I remember hearing in a church service, where 90% of people who have disabled children together end up divorcing. And again, I say that's allegedly, because I've never done any research on it myself, but I did hear that statistic, and it was always shocking. And the statistic ended up falling, according to what I was listening to, towards the men because they just couldn't handle it. So when you told me that story about Mark, I was like, yes, there are still good ones in the world that are not crumbling at the moment something happens. Because I say this all the time, yes, it's very stressful to have a disabled kid, but you don't think that the kid wants to leave their disability, and it's not fair. I mean, I get that they're stressed if parents that do leave, but it's not really fair because they don't get to leave their disability. They're still having to deal with it. And so I just really applaud Mark with his response to that, because he could have ended up being one of those statistics, or you could have. Maybe moms leave at the same rate. I don't know. But I loved his response.
Mark is someone who, and he will tell you this, he's like, I'm not going to worry about something until it's in front of me. That's his outlook. Like, if I don't know, like, I'm not going to make up scenarios in my head about something when I don't know what I'm dealing with and it's not happening. And he is very much like, we will take things as they come and take it one step at a time. And he has really blossomed and embraced his role as Luke and Grace's dad and Emma's dad. He, with our Hamilton County Board of Developmental Disabilities, he is on the board. He was appointed to the board earlier in 2025 in January. So he is on the Hamilton County Board of DD, and he cherishes that position. And he also, they have a dad's group, and he's working to try and expand access and outreach to dads so that that statistic can not be that statistic. And he does see the value in having other men to talk to about this situation and making dads more included. I think as a society, we can do a better job including dads in the process. And then again, it goes back to those expectations. What are the expectations that we have as a society, and how do we start to rethink some of those? Just like you have to do when you have kids, you have to throw all of your expectations out the window. Like, they're not gonna, like, you could expect them to all be NASA astronauts, and I don't know, the space program gets canceled. It's like you don't limit them. I think I got that advice early on. Don't limit, like, why your expectations could end up limiting them in some kind of way. You just don't know how things are going to go. Parenting is an extreme contact sport. You got to just be prepared every day.
Absolutely. And it's, I think the reason why parents with kids with special needs struggle with limiting their children is because the doctors are only looking through their medical lens. And so they're talking to these parents through their medical lens. And so the parents are taking what the doctors say. Oh, well, he can't do this. He can't do that. Not going to be the same. And then when the doctor's expectations are blown out of the water, the parents are like, I don't know what to do because the doctor said this. And so yeah, it's very important for the parents not to put the limitations. Take the doctor's advice, but don't take the limitations with you.
Right. I think that's a good point. Consider the advice, not the limit, like, and hopefully, doctors, and I think training has become more important. And here in Cincinnati, we have an incredible place called the Timothy Freeman MD Center for Developmental Disabilities. It is an adult interdisciplinary care clinic through University of Cincinnati's healthcare system. What that means is that adults will have a place to go. Adults with disabilities will have a place to go for primary care. And that primary care team can also serve as a conduit and connector to other specialists within UC healthcare system So
Wow.
they're in the background helping families navigate various medical issues, but families have a central place to go where they know that they're being treated by professionals who specialize in developmental disabilities. And UC Health, the Freeman Center, just announced its first fellow in developmental medicine. That means that's a doctor that is going to study and practice developmental medicine through the Freeman Center, which is incredible. And the team that founded and started that program at UC wanted to do it at a teaching hospital. So even if students don't specialize in developmental medicine or treat patients with developmental disabilities as their primary profession, at least they will have a place where they can do rotations and have a lot more education than just what happens at traditional medical school.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like I need to move to Cincinnati. Um,
Pretty great place.
I've heard you're not the only one who's been on my program who said, "Hey, you need to consider moving to Cincinnati." Um, I want to talk a little bit more about Grace before we wrap,
Sure.
because you talked about how she had a bit of a bleed on the brain.
Mhm.
Did they repair that in surgery, or how did that?
No, it's so tiny. It's super tiny. The arrow pointing to it on the MRI scan was like 100 times bigger than this tiny, but it was still there. And they were like, look, it's static. It looks like it was a one-time thing. It doesn't look like it's, there's no spreading. It doesn't look like it's gonna, it looked like it was a one point in time event. And so they didn't, that was, there was like that was it. And honestly, Nick, I wonder, would we have ever known about it if the physical therapist didn't recommend us to go to that clinic? I don't know. We might not, like, we might have been like, put Grace in some leg braces and move on, and we might not have never known. I'm glad
Yeah.
that we do know.
Yeah. Does she struggle with any verbal cues or anything like that, or is she able to communicate?
She is very verbal. Uh, she is she's hilarious. She Her favorite animal is spiders.
Really? That's
Really.
unique.
It is very unique. Uh, every time we go to the Cincinnati Zoo, we have to go into the insect house. Like, it's okay, Grace. She sleeps with 4 stuffed animal spiders in her bed.
Really?
And yes, she is a big personality. She's tiny, she's small for her age. So her nickname in our family is Teensy, but her personality is monumental. She's a trip. So um she will be, I don't know what she will be when she grows up, but it'll be something like, she doesn't take no for an answer. It's going to be her way or the highway. She's hilarious. She's a real piece of work.
Sounds like she's going to be a force to be reckoned with if she already isn't.
She is a force to be reckoned with. The other night I was putting her to bed, and it's a whole long story, and parenting, again, is an extreme contact sport and the mental acrobatics. So I am sitting in her room waiting for her to fall asleep, because that's a thing that we do, that we're working on. And she had this little piece of paper that she had drawn on. She goes around her house with like pads of paper and pencils and does work. I don't know what kind of work. She just scribbles on the paper. She's like, excuse me, I have to go do my work now. And she'll go off and she'll take notes on these notepads. And she had a piece of paper in bed with her. And I was like, Grace, you need to quiet your body down, quiet your voice, quiet your brain, quiet your body. Let's work on going to sleep. She looked at me and said, Mom, I am praying, and it is an extra, extra, extra long prayer, and I will be finished when I am finished.
Wow. Okay. So wow.
Mhm.
I was telling you a little bit earlier before we come on air that I'm a big courtroom fan, and I'm going to tease my audience. I'm working on a project. Don't email me and ask me what it is. Now you probably want to know. But if she becomes a judge, dear Lord,
That courtroom would be like, you better bring your A game, and there would be no shenanigans.
my gosh, it sounds like it would be a crazy courtroom. Sounds like she would keep order in it, to be honest. I want to go back a little bit. I know I said we're going to wrap up, but this is what I do all the time. I want to go back just a tiny little bit to talk about the diets that your son has to do because of the it's such a long name. Can you help me?
Sure. Hirschsprung's disease and the resulting ileostomy.
Okay. So as a result of that, he can't have any seeds, nuts,
Correct.
anything like. So is it a fight with him to have things that he don't want to, or that he wants to but he can't?
No, it's been pretty good actually. He cannot have any nuts or seeds or anything with a skin on it. So hot dog, we have to peel the skin off. Apple, peel the skin off. Grapes, even grapes, we try to buy the bigger size grapes. And then I have a little mechanism where I just take a paring knife and slice the skin off. Like I slice off the top, slice off the bottom, and then slice the sides so that he can have grapes because he loves grapes. So he really, we really haven't run into too many issues. They know about his dietary restrictions at school. That they planned his holiday party and they just double checked with me. This is what we're going to be serving at the holiday party. Are these okay for Luke to eat? And I said, yes, thank you for accommodating him. But pretty much everything else he can eat. We do have to make sure that he gets a little extra salt. Again, what's really interesting, Nick, and I didn't really know all this until this is a part of my life. Your colon absorbs all of like the nutrients. Like it's the last stop, and it sucks out all the last of the nutrients and helps you retain your fluids and all that stuff. Luke doesn't have that because he's not using his colon right now. So we have to make sure that Luke gets extra salt and sodium because sodium is critical for all of us, for our existence. And so we have to make sure that he gets a little extra salt. So that's something we will add a little extra salt to his food or sneak a little bit in his milk. And one thing that we did discover is that dairy milk is not the best combo for him. He is anemic, and the dairy milk was really making iron absorption more challenging for him. So we switched to oat milk, and it's been great. It's increased his appetite, and it's been better for his ileostomy. So I wonder, was the dairy milk inflaming his small intestine? I don't know, but it's a learning process. But we just can't have any of those foods that I listed because it could cause a blockage.
Do you have any of those foods in the house, or do you have to be completely nut free, seed free, all?
We have them, but we don't necessarily, we don't like the girls aren't like asking for nuts for a snack in particular. Like we try and keep things like we have them, but like we'll make hot dogs. We just peel the skin off, or like Italian sausage, we just take the skin off and kind of make it like a meatball. So we haven't really had to adapt too much. Now, if we're out somewhere and we don't know what's being served, we'll just kind of watch and adapt. But he's been pretty good. Like he knows what he likes. Like he's a good eater. He knows he knows what to kind of avoid. I think he's learned over the years.
Yeah. Does Grace have any special restrictions, or is she?
No, Grace can eat whatever she wants to eat. She loves cheese, and so probably like doesn't need to be eating a ton of that because it's constipating.
Yeah.
But loves fruit. She loves to eat like frozen fruit straight out of the freezer. I'm like, all right, you do you. That's cool. Um, yeah, Grace is a big sweet tooth. Luke, it's funny. Luke does not really like sweets. He likes ice cream, but he is not cookies, cake, candy, not really his thing. Grace, that would be her entire diet. And then Emma is actually probably my most adventurous eater and has been that way ever since she was born. Like really, like when we started feeding her solid food, like she would pretty much try anything that you put in front of her.
It's so interesting because a lot of that doesn't happen with kids, and so it's interesting to see. So, I mean, with you being a special needs mom too, have you thought about their adult futures yet, or do you try not to go that far? Yeah.
Oh, yes, I think about it all the time. And in fact, and this is a topic for another show, Mark and I started a company 3 years ago called Empower Me Living. Mark has a background in commercial construction. He has a degree in architecture from the University of Florida and spent over 20 years in commercial construction because he liked physically building things and seeing things come to life rather than drawing them on paper. And I can tell you that that is true today. He is the one that plays with Lego in our house more than our kids. And I have a background, I spent most of my career in commercial real estate, both on the property management side and then on the equity capital fundraising side, so raising money. And we know that there is a big housing crisis for adults with developmental disabilities. There's not enough choices, there's not enough options, there's not enough, period, but there's definitely not enough that reflects the wide range of support needs and preferences that people with developmental disabilities have, just like neurotypical people. So we're focused on developing more neuro-inclusive housing solutions. That's what we do for work, and that is because of Luke and because we've seen the need, and we know that today and yesterday's solutions aren't going to solve the problems now, and certainly not tomorrow's problems. Like, we need new innovative ideas. So that's what we're working on. So yes, I think about their future all the time. I don't want to have, again, I'm mindful not to have expectations about it other than ensuring that they get a good education. I think that's my most important, to me is most important and very important to Mark. They get a good education and they build strong relationships. Those are the two most important things, giving them the skills to do that. And then making sure that they are set up. I think the biggest thing that I want for them is to remain close as siblings and be in each other's lives. And then other than that, and making sure for Luke, because he will we don't know what it looks like, so kind of hard to plan, but we know that he will likely need more support. So how do we help prepare for that?
Yeah. So I'm sure it can be a big headache sometimes and daunting because you're like, what happens if I'm not here and all that stuff. And I'm sure you have from what you told me on the pre-call and here as well, you have a wonderful village of people around you that are making sure that, they'll be cared for. What advice before we wrap up do you have for parents out there that maybe just found out their kids have special needs or they're really struggling?
Well, that's a great question. I would say this: be open to the possibilities, not the disability. Be open to the possibilities. This will change your life, yes, but you get to choose if that's for the better. I'm not going to sugarcoat that it's easy and not at times very hard, but it is a matter of perspective. And my grandmother had a saying that I think about almost every day. My mom's mom had 8 kids, all 2 years apart. None of them had a disability, but they were, 8 kids in the house. And my grandfather died of a heart attack when he was 54. So 4 of the kids were out of the house, but 4 of the kids were still in the house. And that was a big curveball that nobody anticipated.
Right.
And her saying was, if you cannot change your situation, change your attitude towards it. It is not always easy to do, but if you can figure out how to do that, it's going to be okay. And then one minute at a time, 1 minute at a time. You do not have to boil the ocean. There's another saying that I love: drop by drop, you get the ocean. So yeah. I think sometimes you can very easily, and I know it because I've done it. And I have ups and downs, and yes, this journey is hard, and it can be sad and frustrating at times. I think a lot of that is more some of the systems in place that have existed that we're working to try and change. But one moment at a time. And I think, again, that was something that I got out of my NICU experiences, was that we're playing a long game, but to get to the next milestone, we've got to break it down into smaller moments of time, smaller pieces, smaller milestones.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you can't change your situation, change your attitude about it. And that can be really difficult sometimes, but
yes, it can.
Yeah, that may be what needs to be done, is that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and really opening your heart and sharing these experiences, because I know it'll help so many people out there. And it's been a while since I've had a guest, so I'm sure people are, like, yes, we don't have to hear Nick for 45 minutes. And so I'm so glad that you came on and that you were a guest. You guys, before I go today, thank you to my amazing guest, Emily Kendall. She will be back on in a month or two because we want to talk about what she does for a living. So she will be back on, because if we did it today, this would be a Joe Rogan episode, 3.5 hours long, and I'm not trying to do that. So, especially on the first episode of the year. So she will be back in a month or two to talk about what she does for work and how her work inspires her and how her kids inspired her to get into this field and all that type of stuff. But until then, before I leave you guys today, I want to mention, make sure, if you can, $5 or $10 is a wonderful gift. If you can do that, go to my GoFundMe to keep this podcast coming to you each and every week. I have producing expenses and things to take care of, so if you're able to help me with that, I would greatly appreciate it. The GoFundMe is in my bio, and if you ever want to come on the show, please email me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com, and I would love to set up a pre-call with you and get your story out there and get the voices of the disabled from the back of the class to the front of the class. That's what this podcast is all about. Until next week, this is the Nick Speaks Podcast, the podcast dedicated to the disabled community, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud. I am your host, Nick Comstock. I will see you again next week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to the Nick Speaks Podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud for the disabled community. If today's conversation resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a new episode. You can find Nick across all platforms by visiting his link tree in the show notes. And please leave a comment to join the conversation. Until next time, keep speaking up, keep speaking out, and keep speaking loud.